Well, welcome to the Get Licensed to Build, our free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the different parts of the license application and to give you some practical tips to help you complete it correctly and to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We also want to help you get ready for the licensing exams and to give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractor State License Board, the government agency responsible for regulating California's construction industry. My name is Rick Lopes. I am joined today by Anna Rodriguez. Good morning, Anna. Anna, you have to turn off your...
Good morning. Good morning, Rick.
There's an auspicious start for us. Okay. We're also joined here at the beginning of our workshop by Susan Granzella. Ms. Granzella is one of our board members and this year serves as our board vice chair. And in case you didn't know, CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy and our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including one labor representative, one local building official, and one representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature. Ms. Granzella, who is from Sacramento, was appointed to our board in October of 2014 and reappointed this past July. She's held several positions at Visa Incorporated from 1996 until her retirement in 2014, including Vice President and Senior Director for Technical Documentation and Audit and Compliance for Global Development. In that former role, Ms. Granzella managed Visa's technical writing and publishing efforts, distributing content internationally to banks and processors, and managing staff and contractors in the United States, Singapore, and India. In addition to serving on our board, Ms. Granzella also serves on the board of directors for the My Sister's House, that is a safe haven for Asian and Pacific Islander women and children in Sacramento. She joins us to welcome you all to our workshop. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. I didn't realize I would get that great introduction. So thank you. I thought I was going to have to introduce myself. Can you hear that okay?
We can hear you just fine, yeah. And if you can go ahead and mute your microphone, but we can hear you fine, Susan.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. It's great to be here this morning. Welcome to everyone. This is a great program to get licensed to build. And as Rick mentioned, I'm a public member of the Contractor State License Board. So first, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to prepare for this big step, to learn more about the opportunities that you'll have at CSLB. So it's a great step. Well, technically, I'm not in the construction industry. What Rick was suggesting is that I relay some of the experiences that I have, which have been extensive in hiring and working with a contractor or contractors. And when I was first appointed to the board in 2014, I had just finished my first contracting job, which was an extensive one, took everything down to the studs. And I had a contractor come in and work on that. Fast forward to CSLB, when I joined, they said, well, what was your experience with a contractor? And I said, perfect. And they said, really? Can you describe it? And what I relayed to them was I went into it knowing nothing. I knew nothing. And he was experienced. He brought in talented subcontractors that he knew through his CSLB connections. He was great at suggesting enhancements. He also was very good about diplomatically telling me no when I had what I thought were great ideas. But the bottom line was, at the end of the day he said he'd be finished at 5 minutes to 5, when he had his toolbox ready to go, he was punching in the time on the new stove in this large area that he had remodeled. And it was amazing because it was perfect. And so what happens is that we used him more for larger jobs, and it continued to be a collaborative effort. It continued to be one where he was caring. He also followed up, 2 or 3 weeks after the job is done. He calls and says, how is it? And, so he has the experience. He was talented enough to bring a lot to the job. So it really expanded what I needed, what his customers needed. So that's my spiel about my contractor. So this is a great industry to be involved in. There are countless opportunities, as I mentioned, all the things that could have happened. And no matter what your interest or abilities are, there are so many opportunities. You can be a general contractor and build a house, or you can be a general contractor and do a huge remodel job, which is what my contractor has done several times. You can be an engineering contractor and you can join projects where you're building skyscrapers, bridges, freeways. That's an entirely different direction. Or you can work for yourself, being a plumber, electrician, HVAC, or a solar installer, painter. Many different classifications are offered. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be a one-person operation, you don't want to be part of a larger group, you can be a one-person operation, or you can set your sights on having a few employees or even building a larger company. The opportunities are really unlimited in this. So right now, it may seem like a daunting task getting your license. You may have heard stories. I am sure that it looks like a lot of work, but if you have the experience to qualify for a license and you know what you're doing, which I'm sure all of you do know what you're doing, and you can demonstrate in an exam or a series of exams that you should qualify for the license, then you can do it. I know you can do it. You'll be just fine. And that's why these seminars are set up, so that task of having to fill out forms or follow up or get the right documentation, they'll tell you how to do it. So it's a lot easier. So in today's workshop, they're going to do their best to help you understand what it is that you need to do. And I also recommend spending a lot of time, if you can, on the CSLB website, because that is what I had to do to be confirmed by the Senate and all others, because they were asking questions about CSLB beyond my limited scope. So I explored the website, and it has a great deal of information, study guides, and information that will help you on your way. So that's my story, and I wish you all the best of luck in this new exciting career for you. So thank you very much for having me, Rick and Anna.
Great. Thanks very much, Susan.
Thanks.
Nice to have you with us. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of our presentation this morning. So what Anna and I are going to do, and Susan, if you're going to stick around a little bit, you're certainly more than welcome. We're going to turn off our cameras so we can kind of focus on the presentation and not the fact that you're staring at us. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, please note, after a 3-month closure due to COVID-19, 7 of CSLB's 8 test centers reopened in mid-June. We're working as quickly as we can to get through the backlog of exams that built up during that closure, and we're administering about 1,000 exams every week. One of the things that makes it tough, though, is that on any given day, between 10 and 20% of our applicants fail to show up to take their test. So as you move through the process, be sure that you're good with your test date. Write it down, put it on your calendar, don't blow it off. Not only is that going to delay you getting your license, you're also going to delay another applicant who would have been in that spot who's trying to get their license. Also, if you're watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and you want to participate, you need to switch over to WebEx. And to do that, just go to a banner at the top of our homepage, which is cslb.ca.gov. You can click on the register and you can get right into WebEx if you have questions you want to ask. If you want to just stay there on YouTube or Facebook and just watch, that's great. You can just stay there, nothing else to do. Also, we would encourage you to go to that same banner on the top of our homepage and download the presentation to follow along. Or you can just watch now and download it after we wrap up. And you also get clickable bonus links that appear on slides throughout that presentation that will get you to a lot of other important information.
So we're going to be presenting a lot of information this morning, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive this video of the workshop and put it on our YouTube channel so you can go back and watch it again if necessary. To ask a question, use the Q&A feature at the bottom right of your screen. Make sure you send your questions to all panelists. We tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how to document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. The questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send us all your questions until after you see that part of the workshop, just in case we answer it during that part. We will go through all of your questions at the end of our presentation. CSLB is trying to identify resources out there specifically targeted to encourage women to get a career in construction. If you have any resources you think we should know about, please drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. We will repeat that address at the end of today's workshop. If you want the list of resources we have put together so far, be sure to download this presentation. We have added a list of those resources we've already identified at the end of that file.
The information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. While the webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during this webcast are for informational purposes only. If you do have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who's familiar with California construction law, or review the 2020 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher, LexisNexis. Both of those links are at the bottom of the screen and on the bonus links that you get when you download the presentation.
We also want to thank you for answering the few questions we asked when you registered. It gave us a lot of useful information. Here's what we can tell you about the folks registered for today's workshop. 43% say they plan to apply for a general building contractor's license, followed by general engineer contractor, electrical contractor, landscape contractor, concrete contractor, and flooring. 33% plan to apply as a sole ownership, 24% as an limited liability company, 15% as a corporation, and 28% are still not sure. We'll talk more about the different business entities in a couple of minutes.
And right now I think we had just about 600 people signed up for this, and we've got just under 200 online with us right now. And just over half the people who did register for today's workshop plan to be the license qualifier. That number drops down to less than 1% who plan to use either a responsible managing employee, responsible managing officer, or a relative to qualify the license. Don't worry if you're not too familiar with those terms. We will talk about those in a few minutes. 1/3 of the people aren't sure yet who's going to be qualifying their license, and we'll also talk a lot about qualifiers. Half of you plan to apply for your license in the next month. More than 3/4 of you will plan to apply for your license within the next 3 months.
So here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We will take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license, the type of business entities, the different CSLB classifications. We will spend a lot of time giving you tips to fill out your application, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. We will also talk about fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help get ready for the exam or exams you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like bond and insurance.
So first today, we'll take a look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more, and that total includes both labor and materials. The law doesn't let you break down the project into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours the job is going to take totals $500 or more, you need to have a state contractor's license. So what's the definition of a contractor? That definition comes from the state's Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We've got a link to that code at the top of the page so you can download when you download the presentation. I'll read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part that we've underlined on the screen. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner, building firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. So in other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if that bid is going to be more than $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Here are a few good reasons. First, You can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and that you are serious about your career choice. It also allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with the fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine, and potential administrative fines anywhere in between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
Okay, don't know, folks, if you're hearing that. I was having a little trouble with Anna's audio. So if anybody wants to send me a text message or even in the questions, let me know if you're hearing Anna fine or if we need to deal with her audio. It might just be me, but we'll go ahead and continue. So what do you need to get your license? First, it's important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations. But know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. So here's a short list of the minimum qualifications that you'll need. You must be at least 18 years old. You must have either a valid Social Security number or a valid Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, or ITIN. You can qualify your license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journeyman, foreperson, supervising employee, or a contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can get a qualifier for the license who has the required experience. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about just how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in just a few minutes.
So it looks like they can hear me, Rick, but let me know if you need me to do anything, okay? It may be possible for you to substitute your education, technical training, and apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions about this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need to have at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates that you have, or official technical school or college transcripts. You want to get those transcripts sent to you, but do not open the envelope. Leave it sealed and include it with your application packet. No, the high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor license.
If you're looking to get education credit to meet the minimum qualifications, this is probably the most important slide of the entire workshop. This is the kind of credit that you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some of the areas, we're only giving you averages, or you'll see that the credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you're able to see on the slide. So our best advice is not to rely on those credits and experience to barely hit the 4-year experience mark, because there's always the possibility that you're not going to get as much education credit as you were hoping for. Okay, the first type of credit is for a degree in construction management. A bachelor's degree is going to get you the full 36 months of credit. An associate's degree will get you 18 months of credit. A law degree will get you 24 months of credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average Again, an average of 18 months credit. An associate's degree in some other major will get you an average credit of 6 months. Credit for individual college classes are given on a case-by-case basis, usually a maximum of 6 months of credit. Apprenticeship completion certificates will get you between 24 and 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker apprenticeship will get you 24 months credit for the C20 HVAC and the C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship will get you 36 months in a C7 low voltage or a C10 electrical classification only. Now, if you have the transcripts for other technical training you've taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try to just squeak by with that 4-year requirement. Also, if you've served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On this page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier must also pass 2 different exams, and both are taken on computers at one of CSLB's test centers. One exam is on California business law. The other is on the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we'll discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the law and business exam.
As we mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both of your exams if very specific situations occur. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in a position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operation. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B, General Building Contractor license, and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing we're going to be doing that you'll need to do is to determine before applying for the license is which type of entity your business is going to be. There are 4 types. First is a sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California right now are sole ownerships. The second is a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is partnerships, where either of the 2 general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. That's about 2% of our licensees. And finally is a limited liability company, or LLC, where a responsible managing member, a responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. About 1.5% of California construction companies right now are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classification list at the bottom of this screen here. First is our Class A, or general engineering contractors. These are the contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones who build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is our Class B, or general building contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is our C, or specialty contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples of this include our C10 electrical contractors, C20 HVAC contractors, C27 landscaping contractors, C33 plumbing contractors, C39 roofing contractors, C46 solar contractors, and C53 swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61/D49 Tree Service Limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
Okay, here's a look now at the two forms you're going to need for your application. On the left, you'll see the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There's a bonus link there at the bottom of the page, so be sure to download the presentation. We'll give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later. Okay, let's break down the different steps now for the application process. The first thing you want to do is to identify who is going to be the qualifier for your license. If you're using an RME or responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are two options. One is an application for the original contractor's license, and the second is the application for the original contractor's license examination waiver 7065. The next step is to determine your company name. Take a look at the application for examples and some things to keep in mind. Your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than the one you're getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you can't have a name like John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. It just has to be tied to the license classification you have. Next, corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name registered with the California Secretary of State's office. And the names of everyone on your Secretary of State registration must be listed on your CSLB application. You can also use what's called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main things to remember here is that the DBA name cannot be misleading and it must be used in all of the advertising and all of your contracts. Another thing to note too is you can use your name as your company name if you choose to. That is an option for you.
Next, you want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualification. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. There is a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have had an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD-214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic, but important. Proofread any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date the application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exams. If so, complete a request form and submit with your application. We'll talk about the use of a translator a little bit later in the presentation.
Next is a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for criminal background checks. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. First is all applicants. Next is each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, and all home improvement salespersons. If you're in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called LiveScan. You can get an updated list of LiveScan locations around California broken down by county on the Attorney General's website. We've got that link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for LiveScan. You'll also see that we have a link at the bottom of the screen for the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you're out of state, it's going to be a little bit tough for you to get us your fingerprints. We'll just be upfront with you. That's because you must submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. So when things settle down with the COVID-19 health emergency, you might want to actually consider traveling to California. That way you can get an electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you do have a criminal conviction? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB will consider. They are the nature and severity of the crime, the amount of time that has passed since the conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. So for applications filed this year, we're going to look back to 2013. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date. So we would look back to 2017. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on criminal convictions.
All right, and along with the education credits we talked about a little earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop, and it's the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. Okay, here we go. It's how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since 2010. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified, as opposed to a trainee, and they can perform the trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
So there is a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience. So feel free if you need to use additional pages. If needed, that's fine. Simply attach them to the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience forms that you need to in order to prove the 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you performed and the dates in which you performed them. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. Do not copy and paste this information directly into your application. These are just examples.
You've been warned. Okay. At the top of the chart is the classification we're going to be showing you, the type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. So the first example is going to be for a journey person experience. The overall theme that we're going to keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note that the work experience form should be completed by your certifier. That's someone who has the knowledge and who has observed your work experience for the classification that you're applying for. And that person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Our first example is for the Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic like this. Residential general building trades. For a 4-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or some supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something like this. Residential general building trades. So you can see what we're looking for is to be more specific. For a supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisory level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something more generic like this. Residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of the state, military, or on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, or as a 4-person, or as a supervising employee. A tip. Be specific about the duties and the employment circumstances. Our next example is a C27 landscaping contractor. First, for experience at a journeyman level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be something like this. Jane performed landscape construction maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be something more generic like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C20 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a four-person would be something like this. Jane oversaw staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable description again would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisor level. The best description would be, as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicant supervised landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would also be something like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. Finally, for our out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors applies. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as work for the military, or on federal land, or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances. Now, by law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of the applications that we receive. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application is selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. Now, this documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You're only going to need to provide this information if your application is selected and you are informed by a CSLB staff member that you need to send in supporting documentation. On the lower right of the screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see that the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. That third column there is for documentation you will need if you're applying for a Class B general building contractor license and you need to use owner-builder experience to meet that requirement. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print this publication. Here is the final page of acceptable documentation that we will accept. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you are asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you're trying to demonstrate that you have 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of experience or other parties to verify the information you've provided.
One other note, CSLB does get more than 1,000 applications a month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. So they've got 2 pieces of advice to share with you. First, don't cut and paste information from the presentation. They know what we're talking about today. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 limited specialty classification. That's a way you would only have to take the law and business exam. So don't try to do that to get around the laws. Okay, that's the content that you will need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check to make sure you didn't miss anything. And very important, be sure you sign and date it as well. Also, don't forget to include the all-important $330 application fee. You'll pay the $200 initial license fee after you pass your exam or exams. Then put your application package in the mail to CSLB, or you can hand deliver it to one of our public counters. And we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to those office locations.
Okay, so now that we've gone through the information you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application itself so that you can see where it goes. Here is section 1. Section 1 is where you're going to list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, you want to make sure that your name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and the entity that you are applying for. And you don't want it to be misleading. So if your business is a corporation or an LLC, you're going to need to make sure that the name that you have provided already to the Secretary of State matches what you're putting in this section here. We do verify the record, so you want to make sure it matches exactly the business name that you've registered. In line 2 is where you're going to indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list here on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. The next section is section 2, business entity. In this section, you will select your business entity. If you are applying for a corporation or an LLC, you're going to need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying for. Section 3 is the qualifying individual full legal name section. In this section, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is a person that meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of the construction operations. The qualifier is also the person who takes the examinations. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you are the only person that will be listed on the license, you would enter 100%. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to make sure that you have listed all positions, depending on the entity that you have selected. And you can find more information on pages 2 through 4 of the application instructions that will help you complete this section. Line number 8 is where you're going to sign and date your application. Next, section 4. Section 4 is the personnel full name, full legal names and addresses. This is where you're going to list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that's going to be listed on your license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you're going to need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of the application instruction. If you will have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page here and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, you're going to want to make sure that all the personnel that you have listed with the Secretary of State is listed in this section here. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in section 4. Section 5 is a series of yes or no questions, so we're not really going to cover that here. Section 6. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question number 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts sent directly to you. Then you can include it with your application packet. Do not have the program send the transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take the chance that we're not able to match them up with your application. So get them mailed to you, leave them sealed, send them in with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit on your education. This credit is not based on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted the 2 years of credit towards this experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in any other language other than English, it has to be translated. Now we will discuss the Certificate of Work Experience, Part 1. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here, you're going to list the information for your employer where you gained the experience. If you were self-employed when you gained this experience, you're going to want to mark the box in line number 2. If you are applying for a B general construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure to mark the box in line number 4. Part 2 of the Certificate of Work Experience is to be filled out by the certifier. In this section, the certifier must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or a full-time basis. Keep in mind that if you were working on a part-time basis, you're going to receive 50% credit for that time, which means you'll need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years so that you can meet that 4-year requirement. On line number 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you perform or supervise that are considered critical for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of critical duties in the CSLB's Description of Classification booklet available on our website. Do not copy and paste the description from our booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers to be critical duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words and be as complete and accurate as possible. The final part of the work experience certificate is also to be completed by your certifier. They need to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date their certification. The next form we're going to discuss is the Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience Form. This form only needs to be completed if you are applying for a B General Construction license and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects that were your own property. A separate form is required for each project on the property. The experience must be verifiable through building permits, final inspection, or other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number here on line number 6. On line number 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. In boxes 8 through 10, you will need to provide more detailed information about the project. Question number 11 asks if any other general construction contractors worked on the project, and if so, what trades did they perform? Remember, this information needs to be as complete and accurate as possible.
All right. With all the information Anna just provided, it's a good time to remind you that we are recording the workshop. We'll post the video on our YouTube channel so you can go back and rewatch in case there's anything you missed. Okay, so now you've got your application submitted. How do you check the status of the application? Here's 2 resources. The first is a secured check. You'll need your application fee number and contractor PIN number to get an update. We'll send you that information after we receive, accept, and post your completed application. The second way is to check is to look online at our processing times. Each week, we update our website with the date that we receive the paperwork for a specific process. As I mentioned earlier, we get thousands, hundreds if not thousands of things a week in different categories. So what you want to do is you want to look for the date that's being worked on and know that if the date shown is after the date that we likely received your paperwork, then chances are that we're working on your application. If the date was after the date that we should have received it, then chances are we probably aren't working on it yet. As you can imagine, we do receive hundreds, if not thousands, of documents every day, and we process them in the order that they are received. So be sure to take the extra time to get your application right so we don't have to send it back for you to correct and have to start the whole process again. Okay, when your application has been accepted, CSLB will send you a notice to appear for examination and study guide. You should get your exam notice at least 3 weeks before your exam date. With our test centers reopened now, we've added an additional session in the late afternoon to early evening to help us catch up with the 3 months that we were closed. While we do have 8 test centers around California, we would encourage you to take the exam at the center that's closest to you. Those centers are in alphabetical order: Berkeley, Fresno, Norwalk, Oxnard, Sacramento, San Bernardino, San Diego, and San Jose. The only one currently not open is in Berkeley.
If you're an applicant whose first language isn't English and you don't feel confident taking your exam in English, we do allow you to use a translator. The translator who you provide simply reads your exam questions. Question number 16 on the application asks if you need to use a translator to complete the examination. The translator must be approved by CSLB in advance. So you cannot just show up the day of your examination to the test center with somebody who's willing to translate the exam for you. When you get an exam date, make sure you do not miss it. If you fail to appear for your exam, you're going to have to pay the non-refundable $60 fee to reschedule. That fee may be waived once with documented evidence of a medical emergency or circumstance beyond your control.
Also, we have study guides available for each of our exams. Included in each study guide, you're going to find a list of sections and topics covered by the exam. They'll also include sample questions, how each section of the exam is weighted, and recommended resources that you can use to prepare for your exam. These study guides are available online on our website. There's a bonus link to them at the bottom of your screen. Now, here's a quick look at a couple of those study exams. This first one is the study exam for the law and business exam, which all qualifiers must take, no matter which license classification. That includes the D series limited classes. You can see the guide contains a breakdown of the examination topics, some test strategies, sample questions, and resources that were used to help create the exam. You'll see the same format on the next one, which is the B General Building Study Guide. I'll wait for the slide to forward for us here. There you go. We would recommend that you really pay attention to the exam content here, especially how we've broken down what percentage of questions will be on each of the 5 topics on the exam. You'll also note on the lower right of both of these slides, you can see bonus links. So you can actually download that actual slide, as well as a link provided there for a complete list of our study guides.
So we do have some new COVID-19 procedures in place for test centers. Here they are. Plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early for your exam. Give yourself extra time to get yourself checked in. You must wear a face mask or other face covering. If you appear ill, you will have to reschedule your exam for at least 5 days later at no additional charge. And you will not be admitted into the test center more than 15 minutes prior to your exam time. We also just produced a short video, what to expect on test day video, that you can watch on our YouTube channel. The link is at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, you'll take the exam on a touchscreen monitor. Before starting, you will see an on-screen tutorial that'll take you through the process. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions. You'll also see a space on each question where you can, if you want, submit a comment about that question. You'll get 3.5 hours to complete each exam. Don't arrive late on that, or that may reduce the amount of time you get to complete your exam. And you'll get your test results at the end of the exam. If you don't pass the exam, you will not be allowed to review the questions you missed, but you will get a statement showing how you did on each section of the exam. And you can reschedule the exam as many times as you need to within an 18-month time period, as long as you pay the non-refundable $60 rescheduling fee each time.
After you pass your exam, what happens next? First, you'll need to pay the $200 for your initial licensing fee, which will be good for 2 years. You'll also need to complete an online asbestos open book exam. Plus, you'll need to file your required $15,000 contractor's surety bond, and possibly some other bonds depending on what type of business entity you have applied for. And you'll need to get your required insurance policy. If you've got employees, you'll need to get workers' compensation insurance. If you're going to be an LLC, you will need your liability insurance. See our website for more information. Please note that your insurance company or broker can submit your insurance information to CSLB directly through our website. If you don't have employees, you must file a workers' compensation exemption form with CSLB, and you can do that online as well.
In about 5 to 10 business days, CSLB will send you a wall certificate and a plastic pocket license card. Display the wall certificate in your main office or your chief place of business. Carry your pocket card with you, especially in situations where you're going to solicit business, talk to potential customers, or sign contracts. We encourage consumers to ask to see your pocket license. If you're going to have a salesperson working for you, be sure you get them registered as a home improvement salesperson with CSLB. Check our website for more on how to do that. Your license will be good for 2 years. It will expire on the last day of the month when it was issued. For example, a license issued today, October 2nd, 2020, will expire on Halloween, October 31st, 2022. Be sure you put your expiration date on your calendar, in your phone, anywhere you need to so you won't forget it. CSLB will send you a renewal notice in the mail about 60 days before it expires, but ultimately it's your responsibility to make sure you renew your license on time.
Here are a couple of other important deadlines to keep in mind. First, notify CSLB within 30 days if you move or change your business address. Your renewal notice will be sent to the address of record that we've got on file. If you're not there anymore, you're probably not going to receive it. Plus, the Postal Service will not forward state government mail. Finally, notify CSLB within 30 days of all changes to the personnel on your license, especially when it involves a qualifier of the license.
Once you get your license and to get to work, you might want to hire someone as a salesperson to solicit, sell, negotiate home improvement contracts on your behalf outside of your place of business. These people are called home improvement salespersons, or HIS. Without an HIS, the official personnel of record on a license is the only one that can sell, solicit, negotiate, or execute a contract. That includes the individual contractors, the license qualifiers, the partners, the corporation officers, the LLC responsible managing officers, members, managers, or employees. Now, an HIS can work for more than one contractor, and as a licensee, you must notify CSLB in writing when a HIS either associates or disassociates with your license.
There are a couple of exceptions to note. First are those who only schedule appointments for the contractor or registered HIS, and bona fide service and repair people. These are the folks that you call out for repairs, including things like air conditioning, heating, and plumbing. But those service and repair people are limited to the work that was initially requested by the buyer or the homeowner. For example, if your AC goes out and you call an HVAC company to come out, the service person does not have to be a registered salesperson. But if they go beyond the repair itself and sell you a new HVAC system, they would have to be registered as an HIS. Also, don't employ an unregistered salesperson. That subjects you to administrative discipline, and the salesperson might get a citation or possibly even a criminal misdemeanor. We've got bonus links at the bottom of this page if you want to look at the actual code section of law.
All right, that is our presentation. It is time now to answer your questions. We're going to go ahead and turn back our camera so you can see us when we're talking to you. During the presentation, I've tried to go through and answer some of the more basic questions that I was able to take care of. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull up the list of questions and go through them as quickly and efficiently as we can. So bear with us as we try to do this. We will try to be as informal as we can, but forgive us if we're not always looking at the camera, but I've got a lot to read here. And Anna, just so you know, is what I've answered. We're going to be starting at a question that came in at 10:21. You'll note that they're in gold. They have a little Q or A in gold. And if you're watching as well, if you're seeing the questions here, you can follow along as well. The ones that are in gold are the ones we're going to start with, and then we'll work our way through. Okay, so the first question is the qualifier for the work experience responsible for the work performed by the applicant when he or she is licensed? I'll break it up into two questions here. So the first one is, and I'll just answer yes, the qualifier ultimately is responsible for all the work that's done by that licensee. Also, if you're a general contractor and you're subcontracting it out as the prime contractor, you're responsible for all the work that your subcontractor does. Second part, when I pass the exams and become licensed, can I make the license inactive until I'm ready to start working? I'll just say, and Anna, chime in if you want. The thing is, though, is you pay for that license as an active status. Unless you're going to be inactive for the entire time, you're going to, it might get just a lot of paperwork going back and forth as opposed to just keeping the license active for the first 2 years. And do you have anything to add on that?
You can definitely inactivate it, but when we issue it, it is active. So you just have to let us know.
Okay, next question is, what about the BS for civil engineering? Now, you know, what we'll do is we knew we were going to get questions on this, so we're going to go ahead and pull up the slide which showed the chart on what you can get educational credit for. And you can see in this case is degrees that are not in construction management are going to be getting you likely 24 months of experience. We're going to go ahead and leave this chart up for a little while so you can look at it. It is in the presentation, so feel free to download it, but 24 months for a BS as civil engineer. Okay, next is, I am applying for my B contractor's license. I'm planning to get my fictitious business name that includes the word renovation. Is the word renovation good enough for a B license? Anna's shaking her head. Yes. Yeah. The
Yes.
renovation is certainly something that it's appropriate for a B license. So you're good with that. Okay. Next question. I've worked in the construction industry for 27 years, but have never completed any apprenticeship program or school. All of my experience is hands-on. Do I need documentation?
Yes, you would still need to fill out the work experience certificate. You would fill out section 1, and somebody of your choosing would need to be your certifier. They will fill out section 2. And what they need to do is prove that you have at least 4 years of experience within the last 10 years.
Yeah, and the thing to point out too is there is no education requirement. Just because you have not gone through an apprenticeship program or a college degree doesn't matter. We just talk about it here because if you happen to have done that, some of that experience can go towards the 4 years of experience that you need to get your license. So it's not required. Licensed schools and things that you go through, not required to get your license, but you do get credit for some of that if you do have it. Okay, next question is, within the 4-year requirement, is there a minimum number of hours per year required? To which Anna's kind of shaking her head. No, if I'm reading the question right, do you have to do a certain number of hours per year? No, but as Anna talked about in the presentation, if you're just working part-time, you're only working part-time, so a year of part-time work is going to be equal to 6 months of experience. So you may break it down into shorter periods like that. There's no requirement that every year you have to do a certain amount of time to get up to the 4 years. You could work for 6 months a year for 8 years, and that's going to get you the 4 years of experience as long as it was in the last 10 years is what we're looking at. Okay, scrolling down here, what business entity would a nonprofit agency be?
So we offer different business entities. You would, we mentioned you could be a sole ownership, you can have a corporation, you can have an LLC, and we have more information. If you look at pages 2 through 4 in the application instructions, you can read what you can do with each entity and determine which would be best for your nonprofit.
All right. Next one. I am applying for my B license. I'm planning. Okay, it's renovation. We already answered that question. Do we need our employer to provide any information regarding our experience?
Yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be your employer. We need somebody, a certifier of your choosing, somebody who knows that you have journeyman level experience. We're looking for 4 years in the last 10 years. So somebody needs to be your certifier. It doesn't necessarily have to be your employer.
Right, and then one says, just to confirm, the certifier does not have to be a licensed contractor. That's correct. Does not have to, they can be a coworker, yes, as long as they work in the trade or the qualifier is getting, as the qualifier getting licensed, as long as they've got the knowledge and they can attest that you have the knowledge to do that work, yes. Okay, does the person qualifying have to have a license themselves? No, they don't. Okay, can you please elaborate on the owner-builder requirements for the C27? So if you can kind of, I mean, it doesn't matter that it's a C27, but just briefly talk about how, if you've got experience as an owner-builder, how you would present that to us.
So the owner-builder experience is only considered when you're applying for a B license. So for a C27, you wouldn't even use that information. C27, you're going to want to have somebody fill out your certification of work experience. We're looking again for 4 years in the last 10. The owner-builder form that we discussed is just for the B license.
Thank you for the clarification. I forgot that little subtle thing. So it's good that you made that. So it's a B if you want to use your owner-builder experience. Next question, will the qualifier be reached out to, or are there any further actions required from them?
Yes, the qualifier is a person who has control and supervision of each construction project. So yes, they definitely play an important role in the licensing process.
Okay, can my employer who doesn't have a B license be your certifier? We talked about that. Yeah, they can. My husband and I have been doing landscaping work for the last 11 years. Does that count as experience when you apply for the C27? Chances are, yeah, that's that kind of experience, but you would need some of that experience in doing the actual work that's required by the license. If you're just doing like your general landscape maintenance work, that may or may not get you the entire experience, but you would definitely go back and take a look at the presentation where we talked about the different experiences.
And you can also take a look at our description of classification booklet that's available online. Take a look and read. It will let you know what you can do. What are the critical duties for the C27 license? So if you read that section and you see that those are duties that you perform, absolutely include them in your work certificate.
Best way to find that too is go to our homepage, cslb.ca.gov. In the search tab, just type in classifications. It'll come up, you'll get a page and it'll show all the license classifications. You can click on the specific classification. It'll show you the definitions that Anna's talking about. Okay, next question is, what if you worked for a family company without tax documentation like pay stubs?
Okay, so we do consider, even if you were working for a family, in a family company, that is definitely experience. We talked about some of the supporting documentation that you would need to provide in the event that a CSLB staff member requested that documentation. So it's not only tax documents. There's other items on that documentation. So you'll want to review that publication. It's acceptable supporting documentation. But again, you would only need to provide that if CSLB staff asked you to provide that.
Next question is, does the qualifier need to own a percentage of the business to get the license?
There is a section if you are having a corporation or a LLC, there is a section on the application that will ask you what the percentage is. Yes, and you'll want to review. You can look also at the instructions. They will explain that to you. Page 3, I believe, in the instructions of the application.
Next, it's just somebody who looks like that they want to be using an RME, responsible managing employee. Can I partner with an experienced contractor who's not yet licensed to get the license for the entity? They would be the one, if they're going to be qualifying the license, they're the one who's going to have to meet all of the minimum qualifications we've been talking about. So if they can meet those qualifications, they can serve as your RME.
And sometimes we see people that do that. Maybe you only have 2 years of experience, and so you want to have an RME on your license for just while you acquire the full 4 years of experience. So we do see that, and you just need to let us know. As we mentioned in the presentation, anytime you have any changes, you remove a qualifier, add a qualifier, just let us know. We can definitely do that. At that point, you would be required to test. The new qualifier has to test, but it's an option.
Back during the registration, one of the things that we asked you when you registered was who was going to be qualifying the license. And one of the options that we offered there was, did you plan to go to a company that out there that you would pay to find a qualifier for you? I was very happily, a little bit surprised that out of the 600 folks that registered for this workshop, not a single one of them said that. And that, why I say that's a good thing is because we have had lots of issues over the years with people who can't meet the minimum qualifications. They go to one of these companies and pay them not only a big fee up front, but chances are they pay them a monthly fee to have somebody who's going to be qualifying that license. Many times these are people who have inactive licenses. They may be retired, but they're just keeping their license. They might be in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They don't necessarily realize the responsibilities that they have. And then the person is usually doesn't have all the qualifications. Something goes wrong. We tend to get a lot of complaints against companies that have qualifiers that in essence that they rent. So I'm very happy to see that nobody's planning to do that. It is something that's out there. I would say if it's something that you're struggling with trying to get a qualifier, I'd be very careful. It's conceivable that's going to work out, but make sure you have a relationship with this person. They understand what they're getting into, and they can help you, support you. The reason why you want to have a qualifier is because they've got the experience, and you want to be successful as a business person. So if you don't have that experience, you want to earn the experience. You want to have somebody as your qualifier who's going to help you along in that process. So if you'll say that you're a contractor or somebody applying, you live in San Diego, and they partner you up with a qualifier who's in Redding, which is like 400 miles away. I mean, that's not really going to be in your best interest. So just be careful if you go that way. Again, I'm happy to see that nobody was planning to do that, but it is out there, and we would urge you to be very careful before you go in that direction. Okay, I will be renewing my application for the 3rd time. I have to change my last name. Is that going to be a problem?
No, absolutely not. You can do that right on the renewal form that we send you.
Okay, next is, does a business or owner-operator need to have a business license registered with the state prior to applying for a license? No, you don't need to have your business license in place before you get your contractor's license. You do want to have that business license in place because there's things like, you know, tax withholdings, and you want to be registered and follow all of the laws that come with being a contractor, but you don't have to have it in place. Now, if you are going to be a corporation, you do need to be registered with the Secretary of State's office. And you want to make sure, as we mentioned in the presentation, that you use the exact name that the Secretary of State has on file, and everybody on your corporate license needs to be on your CSLB license. Okay, next question. Are all employees listed on the license need to take the exam? No, just the qualifier is the person that takes the exam. And then down the road, if you decide to grow the company and have employees, your employees do not have to be on the license as well. Just the qualifier is the only one who takes the exam. Does a business owner or owner operator need to have a business license? Okay, we just did that one. Okay. Will you be providing any recommendations of school and fees online? No, we are not going to recommend any school to you. You do not have to go to a licensing school. If you feel that it might be helpful for you, then you can do that. It's not required. We do have not only the study exams, which, you know, quite frankly, they aren't in extreme depth. The other thing that I would encourage is our California license law and reference book. Now, there's a couple ways you can get this. You can either purchase it. I think it's about $35 if you want this copy, but there's a ton of information. You're going to use it. The other thing is you can download a copy for free on our website. In the presentation, we did have the links up a few slides into the presentation that you can download the PDF for free. There's a ton of information in the first 150 pages or so that's really going to help you on the business and law part of the exam. We cover a lot of those topics there. Also on the study exams, look at the list of resources that we show you there. Those are some other good resources. As I mentioned, you can go to the licensing schools, but it's not required. And some of them can be quite expensive. So that's a judgment you're going to need to make. They're not affiliated at all with the Contractors Board, so we're unable to recommend. So buyer beware, but they are out there, and they're good ones. If you think it's going to be something for you, then absolutely it's an option for you. Okay, next question about the education credits again. How much for an AS degree? I believe we mentioned that. Oh, thank you. There it is. The AS degree. If it's in construction management, you're going to get 18 months. Other associate degrees are going to get you an average of 6 months. Okay, next question. What kind of education credits for general contractor? Well, it doesn't necessarily matter which kind of contractor's license you're going to be going for, unless it's got that construction management. Okay, where do you get the applications? Applications are available on the CSLB website. Right there on the homepage, you see applicants and you see buttons to find it. You should have no problem getting to the application. Okay, just somebody to reiterate, the certifier does not have to be licensed. That is absolutely correct. Okay, next question has to do with out of state. Does out of state work count in the qualifying time? Can you use out of state? And I know in some cases we do have people asking about international experience too.
Yes, as long as you have somebody who is willing to fill out your certification of work experience, as long as they list the duties that you performed, we will consider work that was done out of the state or out of the country.
Great. The next one, I think we have talked about this, but I'll make sure we cover it again. Does my certifier need to have a B license in order for me to obtain my B license? No, they don't have to be the licensee at all. Do I have to get my C20 for ductwork cleaning only? Ductwork cleaning.
Again, I would encourage you to read the description of classification booklet to see what a C20 can do. That's cleaning. You shouldn't require a C20 license, but you'll want to look and that section there, read the description and see what it is exactly, what the critical duties for a C20 are.
Yeah, and the next one kind of ties into that. Asks us if the C20 can sign T24 documents, Title 24. I don't know enough about the requirements and how those would work. So I'm sorry, unless Anna, you know for sure. I'm sorry, we can't help you with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please advise how if a sole proprietorship B license can be inherited from a family member father. The license is currently inactive. They would like to maintain the license and make it active at some point. So families.
So yes, you can be added to a license. What would happen in this case? We would add you to the license. If you were going to be the qualifier, then you would have certain days to replace your father or your family member. You would have up to 90 days to pass the examinations. So you would be required, as long as you can prove that you have the experience, you can keep the same license number.
Okay, next one talks about experience. One thing we did not have on our charts, and so, and in case you know, great. If not, I may have to get back about this one. But they're asking about experience for a master's degree in engineering. My guess off the top of my head would be that if you're looking for an A engineering license, don't hold me to this, but I'm going to guess that's going to probably get you the full 3 years. You would still need at least 1 year of the practical experience, because we do for construction management, we gave you 3. So I can't imagine that we wouldn't for a master's in engineering if you're going to be getting an engineering license. For other ones, I don't know if it's going to get you how much credit you'll get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one is, who can be the certifier if I'm the CEO of a corporation and applying as the RME? Okay, so it sounds like in this case that he's the only one on the license. Well, he's applying as an RME. I'll just read it again. Who can be a certifier if I am the CEO of corporation and I am applying as the RME? Okay, so in this case, you're going to be having to have the experience. Did you get that experience working for this company or another company? If you got experience doing this as an unlicensed person, there's still ways to get that verifiable. And I do want to talk about if, the kinds of credit that we would offer for an unlicensed work.
Sure. So who can be your certifier? Again, anybody can be your certifier. You're going to want to look at that list. There's different classifications at the bottom of the form that it does not have to be a licensed contractor. It can be a 4-person. It can be, if you were part of a union, it can be a union member. It can be a fellow coworker. It's somebody who can certify that you have journeyman level experience, 4 years within the last 10. We do give experience for unlicensed work as well. On the supporting documentation paperwork that we went over, there's a list for work that was done being self-employed, meaning you weren't licensed. We will give you credit for that time. And so you're going to want to look at the different documentation that you can provide in the event that it's requested. Again, you're not going to want to send that in with your application. That's only going to be sent in if CSLB requests that from you. But as far as who can be your certifier, it can be anybody that falls in that classification there.
All right, next question. How can I add or remove person off my license? It's on our website. The forms are there. Just go there, go to the search bar. It's a fine way, change personnel. And you'll get a link to go find that form on our website. I am a legal resident, DACA in California. Do I need to be a citizen of the U.S. To get my license? Now, the two things that you would need to do is either have a social security number or an individual taxpayer ID number, ITIN. So it doesn't have anything to do with citizenship. If you do have an ITIN, then that's good enough for you to use towards getting a license. How much accredited time with an associate's degree? Okay, there we go. We're going to pull the slide back up and take a look at the credits again. We've talked about this a couple times. So an associate's degree in liberal arts, that's going to be you're probably an average of 6 months. And degree need to be completed to get approved before the test, right? Yeah, you need to have your transcripts that you present with that. Okay, I got a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, a certificate in Interior Design, including construction inspection. Does that have to all be within the 10 years? No, the education does not have to be, just the work experience within the last 10 years. So getting that experience at that degree at any point, that's fine. Okay, can I please elaborate on who serves as a qualifier? I'm not sure. We've talked about it in a few different ways. Anna, is there anything you can think of that can help us kind of elaborate on who can serve? It needs to be somebody who's got the experience doing that work.
Correct.
Can meet our minimum qualifications.
That's right. The qualifier is a person with the experience. So that is a person who is also going to have supervision over your construction projects, and that is also the person who's going to take the examination. So it's really up to you who your qualifier is. You will indicate on your application who the qualifier for your license is, but it's that person, the person who has the experience, the person who's going to take the examination, and the person who's going to have supervision.
Okay, next question has to do with interpreters. Do you have the same amount of time to take the exam if you use an interpreter?
I believe you can ask for extra time on interpreter on translation days. They do have they do provide you an hour extra per examination. Of course, if you're done sooner, you can move on to the next exam. You don't have to wait around. But yes, you do get extra time.
Terrific. The important part about that we talked about in the presentation. If you do want to use a translator, please get that approved in advance. Don't just show up on test day with that, because that's not going to work. So, okay, next question. What if the qualifying entity changes once you're licensed? Are licenses transferable to new entities if the sole member remains the same? So Anna, so what are the rules? So in this case, it sounds like they're changing the business entity, and that's not unusual. We have a lot of people that start off as a sole ownership. They may eventually change to a corporation. So maybe you can just talk about.
And it depends. Correct. A lot of people start off as a sole member, sole ownership license, and then if they want to change to an LLC or a corporation, you can always do that. You will have to apply. You're going to have to submit a new application. From a sole ownership to a corporation, that license transfers. It depends. Each situation is different. If let's say you have a partnership and you want to go to a corporation, you can't take that number with you. That partnership gets dissolved. So there's different caveats, but it is a possibility. You would have to apply again and pay the fees again. You wouldn't have to test, obviously, if it's in the same classification that you had, but you would have to pay the fees.
Okay, next question. Does supervising cosmetic repairs to apartments qualify as experience? So supervising other people doing cosmetic repairs.
It depends. I would say you want to be very specific during the whoever's certifying your experience. You're going to want to be very specific. What did you supervise? What exactly was being done? It depends what license you're applying for as well. But it can be considered. It's supervision, so we absolutely give experience for supervision. But it just depends. What type of repairs are we talking about? What license are you applying for?
Okay, next question is, can journeyman level electrical work in the entertainment industry, i.e. movies, live events, be used as work experience? It doesn't necessarily matter what the industry is that you're doing the work in. If you're doing journeyman level electrical work, there's a good chance that will be usable. But as Anna's talked about, is look for, in this case, you'd probably be looking for the C10 electrical. Look at the definition of that. Make sure that you're meeting those requirements, the kinds of things you're doing that make sure that the person certifying your experience, talks about those things, because that's the stuff, especially in electrical, there's a lot of safety issues there. So we're really careful about going through those applications. Do I get credit for an inactive license? I'm not sure what kind of credit, but the whole idea of work experience is that you're actually working. So if you're on a license or if you're involved in a company that's not working, I'd have to guess no.
And it's kind of vague. Do I get credit for an inactive license? If it's your license and you want to activate it, you just need to let us know, and we'll let you know what the fee is for bringing it active. But if you're on somebody else's inactive license, it just depends. I think we need more information on that one.
Yeah, not sure why somebody would have you on the license working. Yeah, okay. I have 30 years of experience in the trades. Specifically, I worked 18 as a project manager level for a larger general contractor. The last 5 years, I worked as a developer, as a director of construction, managing general contractors. Then it got cut off. I want to get a B license. Will I need a qualifier? Okay, so 30 years of experience, specifically 18 years of project manager. What's unclear is that the experience has to be in the last 10 years. I'm assuming that there's some overlap here. But he only mentions the last 5 years he's worked as a developer, as a director of construction, managing general contractors. My guess would be, if out of the last 10 years you've worked 5 years as this developer, that may, but it's hard to give you a final definite answer on that. Anna, is your neck longer?
Right, so we're looking for... Right, we're looking at for 4 years within the last 10. You would get credit for working with the construction managing general contractors. So as long as you have 4 years of experience in the field that you're going into, if you're applying for the B, as long as you have that experience, 4 years within the last 10, you would be able to apply.
Okay, next one is, do I need to have a $15,000 cashier's check in lieu of a bond? I believe that law has stopped in the last couple of years. So now the $15,000 bond is the only option. Okay, I am an architect master student, education credit. If that means you're working towards a master's, you're a student going for a master's degree, at this point, we only go for what's completed. So as we had on that chart, so you would have, I assume, have a bachelor's degree in architecture, then that would get you the bachelor's degree. And honestly, I don't know if that would work. It depends if it was engineering or building contractors, depending on if you would get 2 or 3 years. But as I said in the presentation, is don't just squeak by with it just in case you don't get the full amount you think that you might. Sorry not to be more specific than that. Can a journeyman, okay, we talked about that one and it came up again. Okay. A Master of Science in Real Estate Development. Again, similar to the question we had earlier about the Master in Engineering. Boy, there's, don't hold me to it. I'm going to guess it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 years, but don't hold me to it because obviously you have to have that undergraduate degree. But I don't know what all goes into a master's degree. So my guess would be between 2 and 3 years. Again, if you're not sure, don't let it be what barely gets you over the 4-year line. Or you may, we'll give you an email address at the end of this to get a hold of our licensing people, but it's a real challenge. We get 1,000-ish applications every month, and we just don't have time to be going through a lot of things with people. It just takes away from actually processing the applications if they spend a lot of time going over the what ifs. So we try to give you as much general information as we can. I would just encourage you not to try to squeak by. Okay, the organization I work for has an existing C10 electrical license. To apply for an A license, would we apply for an additional classification? If that organization wants to expand and add the classification, then yeah, they absolutely can add the class. In that case, they would not need to take the business and law exam again. They would just need to take the exam for the additional classification. If so, would the qualifier have to take both exams or just the one specific? No, you can have different qualifiers for each classification. So if you want to have both your C10 and an A license, you can have a qualifier for the C10, completely different qualifier for the A. As long as they're on that license, that's not a problem.
And we mentioned we have over 40 classifications. You can have as many classifications as you have a qualifier for. So you can add classifications to your license. It's a different application. So once you're licensed, you would be looking for the additional classification form to add classifications. The fee, I believe it's $150 to add a classification. Then the qualifier would just come and take just the trade exam.
Okay, I'll apologize in advance for the next one because they say I went to college to become a CNC machines. I don't know what that is. How much credit can I get? I'm sorry, Augustine, I don't know what that is. I would just encourage you to look at our charts, but if it's a degree, is it a technical degree from a technical? We can maybe bring the chart up because we do talk about technical courses. And I'll wait for that chart to pop up here in a second. You may get some credit, but you have to have completed either the technical courses, an apprenticeship, or the degrees itself. Okay, it's not coming up. But yeah, so take a look at the chart in the presentation, and then that'll give you an idea on how much you're going to get. I apologize for not knowing what CNC means. Okay, can I hold a general contractor's license in California and Hawaii simultaneously? If so, how do I go about it? Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't. A lot of companies have it, and actually, it's really a good point. Now, even Hawaii would be the same as, let's say, for example, that you have a California contractor's license, but you want to do some jobs in Reno or in Las Vegas. You need to get a Nevada license. A lot of companies that are near the state lines, it could also be up along the Oregon border as well. You need to get licenses in both states. no problems getting licenses in multiple states. And actually, in some cases, we actually make it easier. We do have reciprocity agreements with a number of states, including Nevada and Arizona, and that may help you be able to waive taking your trade exam. If you, let's say that you've got a general contractor's license, the equivalent of it, go to our website, type in classifications in the search bar, go to the list of things. There's like Anna said, there's like 40 different C, and then you have our limited specialty Ds, which are another, I think, 25 or so limited classes. Yeah, there's underground pipes and tanks and all those kinds of things. So go through that, click on it, get the definition of what they are. You'll be able to find the appropriate license classification for you. If the experience is supervisory in a project management role, does that meet the requirements?
Yes, you will get experience for supervisory experience. So you'll want to make sure that whoever's qualifying you, your experience, knows that you have the experience. They have to be very detailed on what it was that you were supervising. But yes, you will get credit for that.
Okay, next one, are you answering any questions regarding handyman licensing? First of all, there's no such thing as a handyman license. In California, we have what's called a handyman exemption. As we said at the very beginning of the presentation, when does a license become required in California? The law is for any home improvement job that is $500 or more in both materials and labor. So anything that's under $500, any jobs, it's called a handyman exemption. So if you're installing a ceiling fan or maybe putting in a couple of sprinklers, or a job that costs less than $500, you don't need to have a license to do that. So once you do that, you can't take a $1,000 job and cut it into two $499 jobs to get around it. We still do sting operations. We do target unlicensed contracting. It is a problem in the state. We do focus attention on it, and we're very aggressive, especially if you're thinking about doing any work in any of the disaster areas. I would encourage you to think twice. If you get caught contracting without a license in disaster zones, it can be charged as a felony, and you could face potential prison time. So enough about that. $500, the handyman exemption, no license. Definitely, though, if you are going to be doing the small jobs, be sure to get a business license. Take those steps. Be a professional company. If you're working towards getting, your license, you can do the handyman jobs and things to get your experience. If you in the past have done the work, I'll just repeat it. We will allow you to present unlicensed work as experience. We want you to get licensed. Our goal is not to keep you from getting licensed. It's not to arrest you. It's not to cite you. It's not to get charges filed against you. We want you to get with the program, get on the team, be one of the good guys or gals, get your license, and we want you to go to work. We want you to have a good living, be a good professional in this great industry. Okay, let me get off my soapbox here. Okay, next is, how does my certifier approve my experience? Just a statement, or are they going to be interviewed? We talked about, these are on the forms. They have to fill out that form, and in some cases we do contact them to elaborate or if we have additional questions, but the best way is to get that information onto the certification forms we have. Next question. I'm a farmer. I have built several hoop houses and irrigation systems and livestock shelters. Is a limited project license appropriate for this kind of small farm work? I'm assuming in this, you're looking to do this type of work on other people's property.
You wouldn't have to, yeah, correct. If it was your own property, you wouldn't have to. However, if you are planning on getting a license to do it for other farmers, what you would want to do, again, look at the description of classification booklet. We have a link in the presentation, and it will let you know what you can do with the specialty class, and also if you would require a different classification, a C license perhaps.
And one way we can maybe talk for a moment just to kind of expand that on is, we did talk about it in the presentation, is if you do have a B license, let's say that you've got a B license only, somebody calls you up and say, in this case, that using this example, let's say that they want you to put in an irrigation system. Legally, a B contractor cannot just install an irrigation system. You have to have at least 2 unrelated trades in addition to framing. So general contractors are be doing these big jobs. Now, in this case, if they wanted to contract you to build hoop houses and livestock shelters and the irrigation system, if it's part of that bigger project, then as a B, that would be appropriate. You're supposed to be doing these bigger jobs. So I would suggest in this case, if you may take on jobs that maybe just require you to do the irrigation systems. I would encourage you to maybe, look at getting that general contract to be able to handle the big jobs, but you also might want to consider getting maybe a landscape classification or something so you can just do these pieces if those jobs come around to you. A little more work up front to get yourself set up, but once you are set up, then you're you're good to go, and you can take these all different kinds of jobs on. So hopefully that helps you if you're looking for well beyond, and just understand what the difference between a B and a C and how they can take on jobs. Okay, next
and
question.
Another option, I'm sorry, Rick, can I just add something really quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Another option, if you're a B contractor and you want to take on that irrigation, it's just one trade, so you can't do it yourself. You can absolutely hire a subcontractor. You would be in charge of the project. If there was a problem with the project, we would hold you responsible. But you could sub it to a properly licensed subcontractor who has the correct license, who has an active license. You could take on the project and subcontract it out.
No, thank you for stepping in. That's a great point. And also, and there's a lot of contractors out there who are B contractors that don't do any of the work themselves. They sub out everything. So that's another possibility that you can do. Okay, Anna, next one I'm going to throw at you. Please explain the difference between an RME, which is a responsible managing employee, and an RMO, which is a responsible managing officer.
Sure. So the responsible managing officer has ownership in the company. But let's say you want your qualifier. The RMO is the qualifier. We use those interchangeably. So, but let's say that your qualifier is not going to be part ownership, have any ownership in your company. They're going to be an employee. So that's where you would then have them be the RME. They're an employee. We would consider them an employee, but they can still qualify your license. They would still have to prove their experience, and then they would take the examination. So they're the qualifier, but they're an employee instead of being somebody who's actually an officer of the license.
Okay, next, what qualifies as part-time work versus full-time work? What if I work for multiple companies part-time?
So what you want to keep in mind is that we're looking at a 40-hour work week. If you worked full-time for a contractor or somebody who's going to certify you, we're going to go ahead and give you the full credit for that time. If they mark the part-time box, we're only going to give you 50% credit. So then you would then need 8 years of experience within the last 10 years. What we're looking for is 48 full-time months. And so if you did part-time, we would then give you only part-time credit, which you need 8 years.
Yeah, so if you got multiple part-time jobs, we would get our calculator out, we'd do a little addition and add those up and see if it's going to get you the full-time equivalent of full-time credit. Is the application the same for the C36 or is it different? No, one application, the things that are different is if you have an exam waiver or if you are not with an exam waiver, but same application regardless of the kind of contractor's license you're trying to get. Okay, does a master's degree at any time or just a BS? I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific on that. We definitely know the BS. So your master's is going to get you obviously at least the same amount of time as the BS. It may, depending on what the degree is, it may get you more. We'll try to update this in our presentation for next month to include master's degrees. So it's going to get you probably somewhere between 2 and 3 years. What are the requirements for a salesperson? There are no education requirements. There's no experience requirements. You do have to undergo a criminal background check. You're registered, so there's no exams to have to take. I think that's everything. So, okay. Next one, I have more than 4 years of experience in the trade and going for a general contractor's license. All of my work has been small jobs. I have no records of permits. Will the comments from the previous clients suffice?
So in order to start the process, what we need is one person. Oh, it doesn't have to be 1%. We need a certifier, somebody who is willing to let us know that you have journeyman level experience, 4 years within the last 10 years. That's going to begin the process. As we mentioned in our presentation, 3% of all of the applications that we receive go through further background. In that event, we would let you know, lucky you, you've been selected. Your application has been selected. You are going to have to submit supporting documentation to prove that you have 4 years of experience. We provided a list of documents that we will accept from you. It's going to have to be more than just comments from your previous clients. You can take a look at the list and see what we're looking for. W-2s is an option. If you don't have W-2s, there are other options. If you don't have permits, as you mentioned, you don't have copies of permits, do you have old receipts, invoices, old contracts? What do you have? Remember, the burden of proof falls on you. We need you to prove that you have at least 4 years of experience within the last 10 years.
Okay, next question. Does a business owner or owner-operator need to have a business license with the state? No, the state does not give business license. We do have the professional licenses. You don't need to have your local business license in place before you get your contractor's license. Definitely get it, and also be careful. In some areas, you're required not only to have it in the area where your business is located, but if you do businesses in other cities, sometimes those cities do require you to get business licenses to do work in their cities. So check with the local areas that you plan to do your work. Okay, so then this is another question about do you have to be a citizen? No, you don't have to be a citizen. The ITIN, individual tax ID number, or your social security number is all you need. I'm in the process of starting a large-scale handyman business or building maintenance service with multiple employees. We would be doing work in multiple trades like electrical, plumbing, carpentry. What license should you shoot for? Is the general B okay? There's that old handyman term again. Again, the handyman exemption in our minds means things that are under $500. You don't need a license for that. So if you're going to be in this business just doing jobs that are less than $500, eek, but you don't have to have a license. But it's what can you do for $500 anymore? That is a tough one. So yes, chances are your B would be the appropriate one because you can also subcontract, but again, remember the minimum of 2 trades plus framing. That's what the law says. I'll tell you too that the Governor Newsom just signed a bill this week that's going to allow us to create. We've been working towards this for many years now, to create a sub license, which is going to be very similar to a general contractor's license, but without the framing requirements. So we think that's going to really help a lot of you applicants a lot. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be a year or two before we're able to get this in place, but it's going to take away some of those framing requirements, which I know in some cases can make it difficult to qualify. So keep an eye out for that. So in this case, B is probably going to be your most appropriate. Again, if you find that a lot of you want to become the ceiling fan installer or the electrical outlet installer, if you want to make that as part of your business plan, instead of the B, you may want to think about, or maybe get the B, then add on a C10 electrical so you can just take on those jobs. Okay, we've got about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to try to pick up the speed a little bit here. If I work for a licensed company under an existing qualifier, do I use the same forms to apply to become an additional qualifier? Well, you only need one qualifier for a license, for a different classification. So there's no reason to have a second qualifier for that same license unless you're adding a different classification. If that's the case, if they're already a B and you're adding a C10, or like we were talking about electrical, yeah, then you can become an additional qualifier for the same company. What are the conditions under which the exam waiver would apply? That's if you got the experience, if you've already got the license. It's usually the biggest one is if you've got a license already and you're just going to go move on to a different thing, you can usually get an exam waiver. And anything I missed there?
It says what form should you use to apply. So if you are trying to be a qualifier for a different classification, it would be the additional classification form. It's on our website. You would add the classification and you would be the qualifier for just that one classification.
Okay, next one is, what if a company closed? Will a contact from the company suffice? You can't just say that I worked here and here's a contact without having the information there. Imagine you use that on your resume and you don't tell them what you did. No, you need to have somebody that's going to certify that work in order to be able to get the credit. Not that we would doubt you, but unfortunately too many people do take advantage of that, so that's a requirement. Okay, I'm interested in applying, but also want to go to a school to be prepared for your exam. What do you recommend that you apply first? One accepted, enroll in a contracting school. Timing wise, that's entirely up to you. You certainly can, and then just push your exam date out. You can certainly do that. Again, schools aren't required. If you think it's going to help you, you want to make that investment, then by all means, and take advantage. There's plenty of schools out there. Do your research, find the one that's going to work the best for you. You don't have to. Don't think it really matters whether you apply first or go through the school first. Next question. I've been landscaping for 20 years and was a foreman manager, so I would just need to fill out section 1 and the employer fill out section 2.
So you would fill out section 1, and then it doesn't have to be necessarily your employer. If your employer is willing to do it, absolutely, they would fill out section 2. They would list from what year, from what day, year you worked for them. When did you acquire this experience? They'll give us a detailed list of what are the duties that you performed under them. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, next. I've worked in a family landscaping business for over 15 years, but was not paid. Oh, what a lousy family that is. For your work. But they were not paid. Pay stubs, tax documentation. Will the certifier statement suffice, or is there additional paper documentation needed?
We may require paper documentation, so you're going to want to take a look at our acceptable supporting documentation for work experience form that we covered today. Look for additional documentation. If you don't have tax documents, that's not the only document that we accept. So there are other documents that we are willing to accept. There's a link in this presentation here, so make sure you take a look before applying.
Next one, would low voltage fall under the C10? Yeah, you can do it under C10. There's a completely separate classification as C7 is low voltage. So if you want to just do low voltage work, you could go for that one. But if you have a C10 license, you can do both low and high voltage. Okay. Next question is, I have no connections in the construction field. What's a good source to find reputable tech schools to establish training and experience? I would suggest, though we can't make any recommendations, certainly the web, you can do plenty of searches. I would also check in your area, maybe check for a local builders exchange. Those usually tend to be really good sources. It's something that when you get your license, you may want to even think about joining one, investing. There's lots of different trade groups that are out there. Those are great connections. They can get you in touch with different reputable things. Another great resource are the different trades, the building trades, the unions. They have apprenticeship programs, lots of different sources out there. But I'd say first place I'd start with either the local builders exchanges or start with one of the different trades. If you're into home remodeling, there's trade organizations just about every part of the construction industry that can turn you on to that stuff. Okay, please advise how or if a sole proprietor B license can be inherited from a family member.
I think we covered that one.
We dealt with this question before. Okay, now, give me a second. We're starting to see something that we've gotten before. I attended and completed trade school, but it's since closed. How do I prove this education? Well, hopefully you got some kind of certificate or something of completion, because we would need to see that. So hopefully they gave you something upon your completion. Okay, best way to show experience for yourself if you're self-employed. We have talked about that. There's a number of different things. In some cases, you can go all the way down to receipts for materials, building permits, different ways to be able to prove that you've done work. Does a business or owner-operator need to have a business license? Where the state did that one before. Out-of-state work does qualify. I have 2 trades. How can I have 2 different names? And if I need to do it, corporation, can I use the same workers' comp? Okay, this goes, if I understand this right, is you want to have a license, but you want to have 2 different classifications under your license. We talked about that. Yeah, you do them separately. Get your first license first, get your qualifier for that. If it's not you, if you have a different qualifier, get that thing in place. It's under the corporation. Get your workers' comp if you have employees. Then you want to add your second one. You can use the same workers' comp as long as it's covering all of your employees. The same workers' comp, it's all under one company. You don't need to make it different companies. All under one license, multiple classifications, not a problem. Okay, I heard that CSLB most of the time does not approve B license application when the certifier does not have a B license. Is that correct? No, they don't have to have a license to be. I don't know who you're talking to, but it's definitely not Anna. Anybody questions you, tell them Anna and Rick told you that they don't have to be licensed to be a certifier.
The form says they don't have to be licensed.
Like I said, our necks are really short. We'll stick them out, but we're not going to stick them out too far. But we feel pretty confident. Okay, what type of insurance do I need to have a C-27? for the most part, unless you're an LLC, the only required insurance that you need to have is workers' comp. So if you got employees, they need to be covered in workers' comp. It's one of the biggest issues, and as you get into the industry, you'll find out not only are you competing against unlicensed contractors who never carry workers' comp, but you're also going to be competing against other licensed contractors who, quite frankly, cheat and either don't have workers' comp on their employees or they underinsure. They tell the insurance company that they've got 4 office workers when they actually have 10 people out there climbing trees or working on roofs, and they cheat the system and commit insurance fraud, and you've got to compete against that. It's something we look for and we're very aggressive in going after. But the law only requires you to have workers' comp insurance. Now, other insurances that you may want to consider, and probably in many cases will be good, are things like general liability insurance, which covers damages done to a property, things like that. There's plenty of insurance brokers that deal with the construction industry specifically. If you are an LLC, though, there is requirements for some general liability, and we talk about that on our website.
And just can I cover really quickly the bond?
Sure.
You will be required to have a bond. A bond works just like auto insurance. You pay a bond company, a certain amount, you pay a premium, and they offer you 15